10 years after her wedding, Rhaenyra gave birth to her third son Joffrey, yet their happiness was spoiled by the queen, who immediately went out of her way to point out her children Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey looked nothing like Laenor, instead possessing the light skin and dark hair of Sir Harwin Strong, Rhaenyra's champion and secret lover. Though the princess and queen were enemies, their children generally got along in their youth, training and practicing together regularly while bonding over shared interests like dragon taming. But Alicent was sure to remind Aegon, Aemond, Helena, and Daeron their first loyalty must be to each other over Rhaenyra's family. Alicent also continuously painted the princess in a negative light to the king, but in this one area, Viserys took an uncharacteristically strong stance by outright refusing to change his mind or hear negative talk about his daughter. Convincing herself she was on the side of honor and decency, Alicent felt justified in protecting and employing murderers, spies, and criminals for her dirty work, like Sir Criston Cole, her champion, and Kingsguard, whose latest ploy was to bully and abuse the children of Rhaenyra in the training yard, provoking Harwin Strong to intervene, beating Cole with his fists until separated. This spectacle led to renewed talks of Harwin's unusual interest in the boys, leading his father, the Hand of the King, to resign his position in shame. The king, happy to have an honest and honorable hand, refused Lionel's request, much to the outrage of Alicent, who grew increasingly frustrated he refused to acknowledge the obvious truth. When Rhaenyra realized just how far the rumors about her spread, she attempted to make peace with Alicent, offering to marry her eldest son Jacaerys to the queen's daughter Helena, but was rejected. Wanting to flee from the whispers of courtiers and machinations of Green supporters, Rhaenyra ultimately decided to leave the capital, moving her household to Dragonstone. Larys Strong, the younger brother of Harwin and son of Lionel, serving as an agent for Alicent, then took this conflict to the next level by orchestrating a fire back home, which killed his father and brother, leaving him as the new lord of Harrenhal. Informing Alicent of what was done in her name, she realized just how dangerous and powerful this man truly was, feeling there was no choice but to accept him as her closest advisor and spymaster. Growing dependent on his information and resources, as well as fearful of his wrath, Alicent even began a somewhat intimate relationship with Larys. Meanwhile, as all this occurred in the capital, Daemon Targaryen used his time in exile to build a new life for himself, beginning by secretly killing his wife Rhea Royce, thus allowing him to remarry. Choosing Laena Velaryon, they had twin girls, Baela and Rhaena, living for many years as honored guests of the prince in Pentos, where their dragons Caraxes, Vhagar, and Moondancer protected the city from attack. As the Triarchy made an alliance with Dorne in their renewed invasion of the Stepstones, the prince offered Daemon great wealth and permanent residence in the city in exchange for allying against a growing threat in the south. Daemon wanted to consider the idea, but a pregnant Laena was against it, asking to return home and live more ambitious lives. Unfortunately, the chance at this life was taken from them when childbirth complications meant Daemon was presented with the same choice his brother once faced, to either let both his wife and child die or cut open the mother for a chance at saving the baby. Yet the choice was taken from him when Laena staggered from the room to find her dragon Vhagar, ordering it to burn her alive so she might die like a dragon rider. Though Vhagar was hesitant, he obeyed and she died. Bonding at the funeral, Jacaerys and Lucerys started growing closer to Baela and Rhaena. Therefore, when the girls discovered their cousin Aemond snuck off at night and claimed Vhagar without permission, they went to the sons of Rhaenyra, who joined them in confronting the boy when he returned. Filled with newfound confidence after bravely taming mighty Vhagar, the oldest, largest dragon known to exist, Aemond was brash and unapologetic, even insulting the boys by naming them children of Harwin Strong, resulting in a fight where he threatened to kill Lucerys with a stone. Seeking to protect his brother, Jacaerys threw sand in Aemond's face, distracting him long enough for Lucerys to slash out his eye with a knife. In the aftermath, Alicent was outraged, demanding justice against the Blacks, while Rhaenyra claimed self-defense and demanded to know why Aemond was speaking words of treason. Viserys, already struggling greatly with his illness, was desperate for this feud to end, and so demanded they make peace, declaring the matter settled and vowed anyone who questioned the lineage of his grandchildren would have their tongues removed. This was the last straw for Alicent, who went into a mad rage, stealing the king's dagger and charging at 8-year-old Lucerys to cut out his eye. Blocking her way, Rhaenyra held her back while the entire court watched on in horror. After trying to pull away and slashing Rhaenyra's arm, Alicent finally calmed down and the audience was dismissed. Though the queen was humiliated, with rumors of her madness spreading far and wide, her father Otto, once again serving as Hand of the King, was proud of her resolve and promised that together they would see Aegon crowned king. As Laenor was off with his lover Carl Corey, Rhaenyra had to explain everything that happened, causing them both to recognize how poorly they handled this marriage. Though Laenor was ready to forego his happiness and commit himself properly to their cause, Rhaenyra came up with a more drastic but long-term solution that would allow them both to live lives of happiness. Therefore, Daemon Targaryen, Laenor Velaryon, and Carl Corey worked together to stage a scene where Carl murdered Laenor and burned the body before fleeing, when in reality Laenor and Carl ran away together in a ship full of riches to start new lives in the Free Cities. Leaving everything behind, including his dragon Sea Smoke. Laenor's supposed death meant Rhaenyra could marry her uncle Daemon, making them a dragon-riding power couple all of Westeros might fear. This also meant Corlys and Rhaenys thought they lost both their children, and suspected Rhaenyra's involvement, straining their relationship considerably. Yet no further action could be taken against them, as Daemon controlled access to Baela and Rhaena, the only true-born grandchildren they had. It was for this reason Rhaenys wanted to name the girls as heirs to Driftmark, but Corlys would not allow it, as he cared for the sons of Rhaenyra and did not wish them harmed, while also believing they were the key to his legacy and must continue to be recognized as Velaryons despite their true parentage, remarking that history does not remember blood, it remembers names. 6 years later, Corlys was gravely wounded while recapturing the Stepstones, creating an opportunity for his brother Vaemon to petition the Iron Throne to be made legal heir of Driftmark. As King Viserys was bedridden, suffering the final stages of leprosy, the audience would be held before Queen Alicent and Otto Hightower, where Vaemon planned to argue Rhaenyra's son Lucerys, the current heir, was illegitimate. Learning of what was occurring, Rhaenyra and Daemon went to the capital to argue their side, only to learn Rhaenys, who currently ruled Driftmark in her husband's name, was unwilling to help them, even rejecting an offer to wed Jacaerys and Lucerys to Baela and Rhaena, making it clear she would do whatever was in her own best interest. Visiting her father for the first time in many years, Rhaenyra and Daemon were shocked to find Viserys bedridden while constantly drugged with milk of the poppy to soothe his unending pain. Realizing Viserys was the only hope for saving her family's future, she tried to wake him and ask for help, begging that he involve himself and defend his own succession plan. Though it seemed near impossible, Viserys somehow summoned the strength to reach the Iron Throne, aided by his brother when he faltered, thereby taking over from his wife and Hand to preside over the royal audience. With the political momentum clearly shifting from green to black, Rhaenys decided to take up Rhaenyra's offer of alliance and betrothals by testifying on her behalf, declaring Lucerys the rightful son of Laenor and heir to Driftmark. Viserys therefore confirmed the decision, which also meant Rhaenyra's children were legally declared legitimate, securing her family's position as the rightful heirs to the Iron Throne. Though Otto and Alicent suffered this defeat in silence, Vaemon did no such thing, loudly yelling that Rhaenyra's children were bastards, and their mother a whore. Despite barely being able to stand, Viserys pulled out his dagger, prepared to cut out Vaemon's tongue, but Daemon instead cut off his head. While her plans were foiled, Alicent was preoccupied with other concerns, as it seemed all this work put into crowning Aegon king was being wasted on a child with no interest or ability to rule, learning that her eldest son was not only a drunk, regularly unfaithful to his wife, her daughter Helena, but that he recently raped a servant girl without regret. Perhaps it was because of this revelation and the continuously exhausting nature of their feud that both the princess and queen were open to hearing the king's final plea to his family at a private dinner, begging them to put aside their differences and make peace once and for all. Taking the first step, Rhaenyra made a toast complimenting Alicent, who did the same in turn. Though Aegon continued to provoke Jacaerys, the rest of the Blacks and Greens seemed to momentarily accept the truce, enjoying themselves as a family for the evening until Viserys retired to bed. Unfortunately, young Lucerys seemed to laugh at Aemond One-Eye, which set him off to give a toast subtly naming Rhaenyra's children bastards. A fight then broke out, and the Blacks returned to Dragonstone. Though Alicent and Rhaenyra left on good terms, even making plans to meet again soon, everything changed when the queen went to check on her husband, who was delirious and in pain, hearing the final words in which he thought his wife was his daughter Rhaenyra, speaking to her about Aegon and the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy, which Alicent interpreted to mean he wanted their son Aegon the Elder to inherit the Iron Throne, possibly for the sake of an important prophecy. Following the death of the king that very night, the Greens enacted their plan to usurp the throne. Shocked to learn Otto and the small council they filled with Green supporters had been planning for this inevitability, Alicent halted their calls for assassination and possible war to take a more moderate approach, crowning Aegon, securing allies, and sending generous terms of peace to Rhaenyra on Dragonstone. Yet not all were willing to go along with this treason, seeing loyal Lord Beesbury give a passionate speech defending Rhaenyra's right to rule, and the clear succession plan confirmed many times by Viserys, going so far as to accuse the Queen of lying about the king's final words, even suggesting some of them might have assassinated their ruler, before Criston Cole smashed his head into the table, killing him instantly. Lord Commander Harold Westerling then resigned when Otto ordered him to assassinate Rhaenyra, and as the news spread, all those who remained loyal to the Blacks were arrested or executed. In the capital at the time, Rhaenys was kept prisoner in her room as she refused to bend the knee, but was eventually rescued by Sir Eric Cargyle, a Kingsguard disgusted by the behavior of Aegon the Elder, learning he regularly attended brothels and child fighting pits, even fathering bastard sons he cared nothing for throughout the city. Therefore, he stole the crown of Viserys, rescued Rhaenys, abandoned the capital, and parted ways with his twin brother Auric to reach Dragonstone and pledge allegiance to the rightful queen. However, Eric was separated from Rhaenys after they left the Red Keep, and so she ended up witnessing the coronation of Aegon II in the Dragon Pit, where she snuck off to mount her dragon Meleys before breaking through the ground to make her escape. Killing many and ruining the event, Rhaenys had the opportunity to wipe out the Green King and his family, but spared them, believing it was not her place to start this war, and feeling compassion for Alicent as a mother. Making her way to Dragonstone, she informed Rhaenyra of her father's death and crowning of Aegon, the shock of which brought on early labor, resulting in the loss of her baby daughter Visenya. Daemon, meanwhile, seethed with rage, believing his brother assassinated, and immediately gathered their men to make plans for war, declaring they must gather their allies in the Crown Lands, while he flew north to ensure loyalty from the Riverlands. Though they had more dragons than the Greens, their enemies possessed Vhagar, the most powerful of them all. When Rhaenyra felt well enough, she joined the conversation and halted Daemon's plans for immediate war, to instead gather allies and bolster their numbers. Knowing her position was weak, and it was her duty to protect the realm for the sake of the Ice and Fire prophecy, Rhaenyra momentarily considered Alicent's offer of peace when delivered by Otto Hightower, which promised positions of honor and importance to her family if they swore to King Aegon II. Yet her political and military circumstances vastly improved when Corlys Velaryon recovered from his injuries and spoke to his wife, deciding they would support Rhaenyra for the sake of their granddaughters, and in the genuine belief she would make a better ruler than Aegon II. Therefore, in addition to their previous plans, it was decided the Velaryon fleet would blockade the capital, while the recently conquered Stepstones controlled traffic in the Narrow Sea. Meanwhile, the Queen's son Jacaerys, on his dragon Vermax, would fly to gather support from the Vale in the north, while Lucerys took the easier job of flying to nearby Storm's End, where he would ask their kinsman Boros Baratheon to honor his father's pledge of loyalty. Once their army was assembled, they could surround the capital by both land and sea before demanding green surrender. Swearing oaths to act as messengers and not warriors, Rhaenyra's sons left for their missions, with Lucerys soon arriving in the Stormlands. Yet much to his surprise, Aemon One Eye of the Greens was already there, finalizing a deal to marry one of the Lord's daughters in exchange for an alliance. As Lucerys was already betrothed to Rhaena Targaryen, he could not match that offer and was rejected. Yet Aemon would not let him leave peacefully, demanding the removal of his eye as retribution for their fight years earlier. Boros ensured Lucerys left without harm on his dragon Arax, but Aemon followed on Vhagar, bullying and harassing him as they flew through a storm. Yet the dragons grew wild and uncontrollable, causing Arax to attack Vhagar, despite Luke ordering him to stop, before Vhagar killed them both, ignoring Aemon, who was also yelling for him to stop. In the end, Aemon sat upon Vhagar in stunned disbelief that he inadvertently killed his nephew, and no doubt just truly started the Dance of the Dragon civil war. A special thanks to all those who contribute to CivilizationEx. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, subscribe, and check out the links below, or else go to patreon.com/CivilizationEx, where you can gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.